There are places that seem forgotten by time, carved into the earth like scars that refuse to heal. Hollow Pines was one of them. A faded town nestled between rust-colored hills and mist-draped forests, where silence was thicker than the fog and secrets lingered longer than the seasons. It wasn't on any major road, nor did it appear on modern maps. You had to want to find it, or worse, you had to be called. Jared Lane never intended to stop there. He was a documentarian, traveling cross-country for a project on abandoned mining towns. The region around Hollow Pines had once been rich with silver veins and whispered legends, the kind that old men muttered about when they thought no one was listening. His GPS had glitched on the highway, spinning in circles, then blacked out entirely. The last gas station he passed had a dusty pump and a woman behind the counter who looked straight through him when he asked for directions. "You're close," she said. "You'll know when you're there." The road narrowed, trees crept closer, and eventually the sign appeared. Hollow Pines, Est, 1883. It was crooked, moss-covered and bullet-pocked, as if someone had tried to erase it long ago. Past the sign, the town unfolded like an old memory. Boarded up storefronts, a chapel leaning sideways, and a schoolhouse roof half caved in. The air smelled like wet earth and copper. Jared parked near what used to be a general store. He wandered with his camera, drawn not just by the decay, but by the overwhelming sense that he was being observed. There were no animals, no wind, just the crunch of his boots and the occasional buzz of a dying light bulb inside the saloon. Then he saw the house. It wasn't like the others. This one was intact, its windows dark but unbroken, its porch swept clean, as if someone still lived there. A single lantern flickered behind a curtain on the upper floor. Jared's instincts as a filmmaker kicked in. He had found the heart of Hollow Pines. As he approached, a voice rasped from the shadows near the porch. "She doesn't like strangers." Startled, Jared turned. An old man sat on a bench, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. His hands were wrapped in cloth, stained with something dark. "I didn't mean to trespass," Jared said. "I'm just documenting." "You're already documented," the man replied. "She keeps a ledger, every footstep, every question, every mistake." Jared asked who she was, but the man only chuckled and muttered, "You'll see." Against his better judgment, Jared stepped onto the porch. The door opened before he could knock. It wasn't dramatic, just a soft creak, like it had been expecting him. Inside, the house was pristine, dustless, cold. The walls were lined with portraits, hundreds of them. Men, women, children, all unsmiling, all painted in shades of grey and green. Their eyes followed him. The air grew heavy as if time was slowing. From upstairs, he heard the faint sound of humming. Jared called out, "Hello?" But there was no reply. He climbed the stairs one by one. The humming grew louder, warbled, out of tune. At the top, the hallway stretched longer than it should have, doors lining each side like teeth in a grin. One stood slightly ajar, glowing faintly. He pushed it open. Inside, an antique mirror faced the window. No one sat at the vanity, but the chair rocked as if recently used. On the surface of the mirror, names were etched, dozens of them, carved into the glass from the inside. And then Jared saw his own, etched fresh, still glistening, his breath caught in his throat. He stumbled back, knocking the chair over. The humming stopped. A whisper, impossibly close, curled into his ear. "Now you belong here too." His vision blurred. He rushed downstairs, but the door was gone, not closed. Gone. A wall stood where it had once been. He ran through rooms that shifted shape behind him. Furniture moved. Hallways stretched and bent. The portraits aged as he passed them, their mouths curling into mocking smiles. When he finally collapsed on the floor, gasping, he saw the old man again. Only now he stood in the corner of the room, staring down at him. "She doesn't like strangers," he repeated, softer now. But she loves collectors, scratching, not the creak of an old house settling or the distant shuffle of wind-blown leaves, but deliberate scratching, slow, rhythmic, like a pen on parchment. He was no longer in the house's front room. The floor beneath him was stone, cold and damp. Dim light spilled from a crack above, and the air smelled of mold and something metallic, faintly sweet. He sat up. The walls were stone, too, carved with symbols, some Celtic, others far older, like the desperate scrawlings of people trying to speak a forgotten language. A voice came from the shadows, not the old man's this time, softer, feminine. They always think they can leave. Jared turned. A woman stood at the edge of the light. Her skin was pale, translucent in places, revealing dark veins that pulsed unnaturally. Her eyes were entirely black, no whites, no irises, just depthless voids. "I didn't mean to intrude," Jared whispered. "You didn't. You were summoned." She stepped into view, and he saw that her dress was woven from strips of old photographs, curling at the edges, faces fading into one another like lost memories. She moved with the fluid grace of someone who'd walked too long between realms. "This place," she said, "feeds on memory, on fear, on the weight of stories that should have died centuries ago." Jared tried to stand, but his legs trembled. The room spun. She smiled, not kindly. "You filmed it, didn't you? With that little device you carry?" He nodded, too afraid to lie. "Good," she whispered. "Then others will come. And the house will watch. It will learn." Jared reached for his camera, still slung around his shoulder, and played back the last few seconds before he blacked out. The footage was there. Distorted, yes, but visible. The portraits, the mirror, even the old man. But something strange had appeared near the end. Dozens of faces behind him in the hallway, none of which he remembered seeing. When he looked up again, the woman was gone. In her place was a door, an arched frame of bone and rusted hinges. It opened before he could reach for it. Beyond it stretched a spiral staircase descending into a chamber lit by candles that burned upside down. The deeper he went, the louder the scratching became. At the bottom, he found the source. A figure sat hunched over a desk, back turned. A massive book lay open before him, pages yellowed and brittle. The figure wrote with a quill that bled red ink. On the walls were hundreds, maybe thousands of Polaroids pinned like trophies. All of them showed the same thing. People standing in front of the house, smiling, tourists, explorers, wanderers. But Jared noticed something terrifying. The same people appeared over and over in different photos, wearing different clothes from different decades, sometimes in color, sometimes in black and white. They always looked slightly older, more tired, trapped. The figure turned. It was Jared, older, gaunt, eyes hollow, writing furiously. He looked up, and for the first time, Jared understood true terror. His future self spoke in a voice that cracked like dry wood. "You're already part of the story, and you'll keep writing it until someone replaces you." Jared fled. He doesn't remember how he escaped that room, only that the house eventually spat him out at dawn, bruised, disoriented, and missing 2 days. His car was where he left it. The house, gone. In its place was a foundation overgrown with weeds and a rusted mailbox that read, "T. Elbridge, Keeper of Records." Back in the city, he uploaded the footage, but each time he tried to edit it, new clips appeared, things he never recorded. Faces in reflections, whispered names, symbols drawn in condensation on the lens. His video went viral within hours. Not for the story. People were used to urban legends, but for something no one could explain. In every thumbnail, no matter the edit, Jared's face was never the same twice. Each version a little older, a little more worn, a little more like the figure in the ledger room. And now people were reaching out to him. Viewers, other documentarians, artists, curious wanderers. They wanted to find hollow pines too. And he knew that's exactly what the house wanted. If you've made it this far, You're not just a viewer, you're part of this too. But here's the deal, if you're brave enough, leave a comment describing what you think the house feeds on. Don't say fear or souls. Dig deeper, get weird, get unsettling. We'll feature the most twisted answers in the next tale. And if you're not already part of our circle, hit that subscribe button. Not because we asked, but because you felt something move behind you while listening. Welcome to Voices from Beyond, Forbidden Tales. Jared stopped uploading after that. The comments became wrong. Not mean or mocking, he could handle that, but predictive, too specific. One user described the exact wallpaper pattern from the chamber he never showed on camera. Another referenced a melody that played from a gramophone he had forgotten about entirely until he started humming it in his sleep. And then came the drawings, hundreds of them. Children's sketches, adults' detailed charcoal work, all of them depicting the house, but always from angles Jared had never captured. Some showed its foundation beneath the earth, where hands reached upward like roots. Others revealed rooms he never entered, rooms filled with clocks that ticked backward, or windows looking out onto unfamiliar moons. One drawing in particular stopped him cold. It showed a man, him, sitting in front of a mirror, but in the reflection he was painting the viewer. That night, he received a package, no return address. Inside was a frame. The photo within it showed Jared asleep at his desk, taken from inside his apartment. The next few nights he stayed at hotels. Still, the dreams followed. In them, he was always walking the halls of Hollow Pines, except now the house whispered, not in words, but in pulses, like heartbeats beneath the floorboards. And always, there was a portrait at the end of the hallway, covered in a black veil. He never lifted it, until one night. He did. The portrait didn't depict a person. Not exactly. It was a shifting silhouette, a shape that mirrored the viewer, but not in real time. It lagged, it remembered, and sometimes it showed emotions the viewer wasn't feeling. Grief, anger, hunger, and behind the figure always stood a house, different each time. Sometimes Victorian, sometimes brutalist, sometimes just a mound of breathing earth with windows like eyes. Jared began to notice changes in his surroundings. His own apartment walls grew darker, stretched taller. Mirrors grew colder to the touch. He left notes for himself, warnings, reminders, but they were always written in someone else's handwriting. Eventually, he returned to where Hollow Pines once stood. The land had changed again. Now there was a studio there, a sleek, modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows, no signage, just a single red door. Inside were canvases, dozens, all blank, and in the center, an easel with a brush still wet with paint. Jared painted for 7 hours straight. When he came to, he had no memory of what he'd created. But the canvas held a perfect likeness of a face he had never seen before. An old man, not the one from before. This one was smiling, subtly, with eyes that seemed aware of the viewer, like he'd been waiting to be seen. Beneath the painting, a brass plaque read, "Welcome Home." Jared tried to burn the canvas. It wouldn't ignite. He tried to bury it. It returned to his apartment. Now he lives with it. Sometimes it smiles wider, other times it weeps. And every time someone watches his video, it blinks. He doesn't upload anymore, but the channel grows. Somehow, the footage mutates. New videos appear, stories Jared never told, interviews with people he never met, all filmed in that impossible studio. And always, just before the video ends, the frame lingers on a face in the background, never the same twice. Some claim it's just clever editing. Others say the channel was cursed from the moment Jared stepped onto the porch of that house. But a very few, have gone missing after commenting, "I saw it blink too." So now it's your turn. Tell us the title of the next painting. What's it called? What does it show? Drop it in the comments. The more surreal, the better. We'll bring the most chilling ones to life in future episodes. And remember, if something feels like it's watching you while you sleep tonight, it might be deciding if your story is worth telling next. Until then, we are voices from beyond, forbidden tales, and not everything that's framed stays still.